Hi, I'm Kale, and I'm a preacher's daughter.
And I'm Eden, and I'm also a preacher's daughter.
And this is Gay Girls, Good God.
Christian content from a queer and cozy perspective.
We have a new set because I've been rearranging.
We are cozy pilled.
Yes.
We are comfort maxing. We are
snug
as a bug in a rug.
Exactly. It's too much.
It's too much.
Also,
Girl.
there's a ladybug. I don't know if you can see it in the screen, viewers on YouTube, but there's a ladybug. Her name is Nancy.
Nancy Reagan.
Nancy Reagan, yes, and also Benadryl is back with us. She refused to get up a minute ago. Eden was trying so hard.
I feel so bad. I don't want to kick her out of her spot, but she also looks pissed that I'm here. She's like, these
but also she hates you.
Yeah.
Jet's. It is probably. I don't know if it's because I don't know what the cause is and what's the effect, but she hates you and Jet loves you.
Jet's obsessed with me.
He's and he always has been.
We've been best friends since day one.
I
am just friends with you so that I can stay friends with him. Yeah.
I remember I have a picture from one of the first times we hung out, and it was you holding Jet like a baby.
Yeah. That's my child. Get out of the way of me and my son.
Anyway, so Sister Eden, how's life?
Life has been okay. I've been working a lot. I don't know.
I feel like I haven't seen you in
I know
a week.
Usually, by the time I get up to go to work, I only have an hour, and I'm just getting ready, and then I go to work, and by the time I get back, you're asleep.
Because I am a grandma.
Yeah, well, because you have a normal schedule. Meanwhile, I'm going to bed as the sun rises. Yeah. The sun also rises.
So we're in the same house, but I have the day shift, and I have 9 to 5, so you took the night shift.
And did.
And Lucy Dacus, friend of the pod.
Lucy Dacus, friend of the pod, breaks my heart and stitches it back together herself every time.
So true.
Home videos.
Like we said, video incoming on home video. It's a matter of time.
Girl, as soon as I heard VBS, I said,
I was talking about VBS the other day, and you were like, Lucy Dacus. You said something about Lucy Dacus, and I was like, every time now. But I'm glad that she has reframed VBS for me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
VBS episode also incoming, obviously.
Yeah, that'll probably be in the summer.
Yeah. Do you remember? You know what? We can't get into that. That's to be for a different episode. Sister Kale, who are you praying for lately?
Oh my gosh, let's see. Who am I praying for? I am praying for all of my girlies who don't really want to go to therapy, and so they've looked up. They're reading books, and in those books, they're starting to practice mindfulness.
Shut up!
I said that once.
This bitch got a book that's mindfulness for people with blah, blah, blah.
Okay, friends, the best part of having your
best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Best part of having the other the person who shares one brain cell with you is I can do whatever bit I want, and I know it's gonna land.
Literally every single time you open your mouth and then look at me in a certain way, I'm like, this fucking bitch.
And so I made a comment about mindfulness today, and now every time we say something, we're mindfully. I'm going to mindfully watch these birds outside.
I'm going to mindfully finger myself.
And
did and will. It's very that. So it's just mindfully.
So I hope that all of our listeners can take time in their day to do something mindfully.
Listen to this podcast mindfully.
Mindfully.
Yeah, you know what would be a mindful way to listen to this podcast?
Watch and observe.
Subscribe,
yes,
and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Gay Girls Good God.
And if you don't, it's okay. But I just want you to know that you're not being mindful about it.
You're not. And what does not being mindful mean? You're going to hell.
Exactly.
Thank you, Sister Kale.
Yes,
Thank
exactly.
you, Sister Kale.
And so now that you know, I would like to ask you, Sister Eden, what are you mindfully praying for this week?
Allow me to mindfully answer you. This is
we can't do this
before every
we
sentence.
Can't.
Well, mindfully.
But the thing is, you can. That's the point.
That's the danger.
That's the danger of Benny is pissed. By the way,
I'm so sorry, Benny. But,
well,
what if she just?
Anyway, Sister Eden,
I'm praying for Benny. No, I'm kidding. I'm praying for. Right now, I'm praying for all of the working class girlies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm praying for all of the girlies who are right on the edge of destitution and also right on the edge of being okay, and whose check engine soon light comes on.
Oh my god.
Girl, never in my life has the check engine soon light come on when I was in the right time.
That is so true. Like
it always comes at the worst moment.
The thing is like that is always the thing that like sets it off.
And girl,
once that like
set off I was.
Once that tire, I've been in situations where like I've been having a rough day, and then I get in my car and I go to pull out, and bam, my side mirror's gone. And I just look at it and I'm like,
no, literally. And half the time I'm going to my car, it's so that I can go drive around and scream, cry anyway.
Real.
So.
And
what?
And
what? You don't have to say it like that, like you're judging me. You know?
And so, like, I wonder, there's gotta be, like, I know there's a God because of the check engine light.
I know there's a God, because and he's cruel.
The comedically timed check engine light.
The cosmic horror comedy that is the check engine soon light.
Well, I find it so interesting because horror and comedy, as many Splatstick fans will know, are so linked.
As Jordan Peele once said, or Jordan Peele was able to make such a successful transition from comedy to horror, it's because they're both about asking and then answering questions. Horror is just comedy is it asks you a question and it gives you an unexpected funny answer. Horror asks you a question, leaves you in that suspense, and then gives you a terrifying answer.
Yeah, my favorite combo is the movie. Have you ever seen Drag Me to Hell?
No, I've heard it's good though.
It is by Sam Raimi, who is the same person who did the Spider-Man trilogy, the original with Tobey Maguire,
and other spooky stuff.
And it's just like another spooky stuff. I think he did the Evil Dead series,
probably.
Maybe? Anyway, but like it's called Splatstick, and it's just things that are so outlandish and so grotesque, and I think that should, like, that's why I love the Scream movies, is those things that can finally intersect where it's like horror but it's also like, what are we doing?
It's tongue-in-cheek. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It's winking at you.
Yes.
But it's winking at you, but also it knows it doesn't have to wink because you're both already in on the joke.
Right.
I would call that camp. Mama, it's camp. Camp horror.
Lessons on Camp.
Notes on Camp by Susan Sontag. Notes on Camp by Susan Skintag.
Exactly. I had someone tell me I was camp once. Shout out Lauren Hankins, friend of the pod. And I think about that often now. And now I can't do it. I can't be camp anymore because now I know.
Well, that's a debate to be had. But I don't. Who was this a gay person?
I would say that they. Yeah. No. She's bi. Yeah.
No. I don't know. I feel like
I was gonna say she's one of those straight people who like they're queer, but it's like, oh wait, no, she's told me she's bi. Never mind, she's
that's
queer.
all bi people. No, you know, two bisexuals on the. Oh my god! All right, what were we talking about?
Camp. Horror and comedy.
Horror and comedy, mama. Well, also like. What's it called? Not slapstick. Splatstick.
That's what I was saying. Splatstick. Sam Raimi. That's what Drag Me to Hell is. It's things that are so like outlandishly grotesque.
That also harkens back to our Southern Gothic episode, because a lot of what the Southern Gothic is the word grotesque in literature means like it's basically like something that's so disgusting and in your face that it almost makes you want to laugh, because it's just like, what? Literally.
Yeah.
Love that. So it's kind of like Southern Gothic.
Yeah.
Splatstick.
I like that.
Splatstick is like the Americana suburban Southern Gothic.
Yeah. I love Scream. The Scream movies are like one of my favorite movies.
They're so good.
Wes Craven.
I only recently got to watch them. Like,
really?
Yeah, a friend showed. Shout out Little Bear. I love those movies. They were. I don't know. I had heard so much and seen everything spoiled and referenced, so I was like, they can't be that good because it's like this pop cultural like touchstone. But it was actually like a good movie.
The first one and the fourth ones are and the fourth one is my favorite.
Period.
And I haven't seen the newest one, the Jenna Ortega.
Well, now it's basically scrapped.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, do I even bother if it's just gonna be disappointing in the end?
Shout out Jenna Ortega, friend of the pod.
Yeah, shout out Jenna Ortega for real.
And Free Palestine.
Free Palestine, yeah, again. Still,
continuously, and will be mindfully. Free Palestine.
Yeah.
You guys, have we tried doing it mindfully yet? Maybe it's not working because
we haven't been mindful.
We haven't been mindful.
I'm posting this Instagram story mindfully.
Bibi Netanyahu mindfully committing genocide.
Oh my god.
Well, I put mindful before. It's okay. It's okay. It's great.
Yeah. So mindfully, I would like to ask you, what do you have for me today?
Mindfully, I would like to answer. I'm not going to do that anymore. And also...
And scene.
Today we are talking about the Christian Panopticon.
Slay!
So, Kale, tell me a little bit about what you know about the Panopticon.
So I don't know much, but okay, here we go. I'm gonna use some context clues.
Okay.
The word pan means like sort of like all or sort of spread.
Shout out to
and then
pansexuals.
Opticon usually means optics, which means like a lens through which you see something. Like myopic means like a singular lens.
Ooh.
So I'm guessing it means a lens in which you look at everything through.
Okay, that is excellent, analysis of the word. It's not exactly that. It's actually kind of the opposite, but in that way, it is related. So the Panopticon, to give listeners and Kale a little bit of an introduction, is a prison design, but is also kind of used as a metaphor, as a thought experiment, as a kind of intellectual touchstone in postmodern philosophy.
Okay.
It was, and I'm going to be pulling from a few different articles. I'll talk about them a little bit, but this is mostly just going to be a discussion, so don't get intimidated. This isn't going to be too academic or anything. But just to make sure everyone knows.
Because I'm dumb as hell.
No! Because I'm annoying. So according to Emma Whitford of Brown University, in an online article she titled The Mirror Proposal, it was actually originated by a man named Jeremy Bentham, who was an English philosopher and social theorist in the mid-1700s, who invented a social control mechanism that would become a comprehensive symbol for modern authority and discipline in the Western world, a prison system called the Panopticon.
Okay.
The basic principle for the design, which Bentham first completed in 1785, was to monitor the maximum number of prisoners with the fewest possible guards and other security costs. The layout, which is depicted below, I'll put up a picture right here for anyone watching on YouTube, consists of a central tower for the guards, surrounded by a ring-shaped building of prison cells. So basically think of it like this, with just one guard sitting in the middle.
This is not where I thought this was going.
I know, it's very different, but I'm glad because that means I'm going to get your live, honest reactions to things. So think of what a panopticon is it's like, think of one guard sitting in the middle of this circular prison. And in every single cell of these circles, the inside wall is missing. So that guard, or his glass, can look into any given cell at any point. Let's say he has a spotlight that he can look into only one at a time.
It's like Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Looking at all the things.
With the cameras.
All the horrors.
We're in, it's very that. So, in theory, most of 99% of the time, the guard can't actually see what you're doing. Can't see if you're trying to escape, can't see if you have contraband, can't see if you're doing anything illegal. However, you also don't know when the guard is looking at you and when he isn't. So even though most of the time the guard isn't looking at you, you train to self-surveil, self-regulate, and follow the rules no matter what, because there's always the possibility and threat that he's looking. So this was later.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was later hugely popularized and expounded upon in different variations in the world of postmodern philosophy.
It's giving omnipotent.
Exact, girl. We'll get into it. Hundreds of years later, by friend of the pod, Michel Foucault.
Slay, Foucault.
Foucault, in his 1975 book, A Discipline and Punish: The Birth of the Prison, which was hugely influential for the time. If you ever hear the meme about Foucault calling everything a prison, like school is a prison, like blah blah, it kind of came from. It is.
Your teacher is a platypus.
Man, my teacher's a panda. Exactly. That was Michel Foucault.
Okay.
In doing a boiler set. The teacher is a prison guard. Bury that. He basically expanded upon this idea and cemented it in postmodernist philosophy. So essentially, when we talk about the Panopticon, you can think of it as the way society or specific social structures or groups or also importantly rhetorics construct a panopticon, wherein everyone internalizes this is kind of how society in general works. Society, it's like
we live in a society.
There is always a threat of violence or disapproval or ostracization if you engage in certain behaviors or ideas or things like that. So you learn and internalize the idea that they are bad, I should not do them, and it becomes something that you carry with you even if they aren't around you.
Okay.
So, you live your whole life according to those rules.
Right.
You internalize the idea that those rules are true, and you enforce them on other people too. You become part of it. So all this to say, I would like to kind of talk about the Panopticon in the way that I think it helps us understand a lot of how Christianity operates.
Word, yeah.
Specifically between like kind of the Christian, like the religion itself, but then also with our experience in like Southern Baptist churches, the way that the church congregation, like in a totally secular sense, also acts as a kind of panopticon, like the pastor and or the church ladies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, girl?
Yeah, to quote Monique Hart, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean. Exactly. So one of the first things I want to pull from, one of the first and only, I promise I won't be too academic, is an article titled Surveillance Discipline, Panoptic Vision in Early Christian Self-Definition. This is by David M. Rees in the Journal of the Bible and Critical Theory, which, now that I've discovered that's a journal, girl, I'm going to be me at 3 a.m. Computer, show me the Journal of Computer. Exactly. So basically what he talks about and argues in this article is that Christian literature from like the very early points in the church reveal a panoptical rhetoric in constructing God's authority and encouraging self-surveillance. So basically what he's talking about is that in early church writings, when we're having these like Carthaginian like philosophers, and we're having all these early thinkers who really define in the early days of Christianity what the thought tradition and philosophy of the theology is. A lot of it centers on a panopticon idea of God's like punishment, authority, his moral compass.
Yeah.
So think of it this way. What he's saying is, the religion didn't have to be this way, but in the early days when people were writing about and talking about how like this new religion needs to be applied to your everyday life, they were like, well, like in thinking of like God's grace, because it's more of a personal relationship with him and everything, it's like you need to live your life like this. You need to internalize all of these ideas like this, no matter what, and God can always see. He can see every action you do. He can see every thought you have. And he can see if
Jesus
you even
Christ.
really mean it or like believe it or not.
Yeah.
So it's like unless...
Even if you don't know that you mean it.
Exactly, bitch. Exactly. So it's like you have to be not only doing everything right, but fully convicted and have fully like brainwashed yourself into being a part of this religion and its belief systems. Otherwise, you are going against God's authority. So it really like constructs this authority in terms of like omniscient, like knows everything, and omnipresent, like he's everywhere. Those two like core fundamental components of the omni-god that Christianity worships
Omni-man.
Omni-man. Scary.
Real.
Lend themselves to this like notion of God as a surveiller.
Okay.
And then another writer goes on to kind of expand upon this and talk about something similar. Emily R. Kane, in the Journal of Early Christian Studies, writes in her article Tertullian or Tertullian, I couldn't really figure out. Tertullian's Precarious Panopticon, a performance of visual piety. In this, she examines one specific, like, early Christian writer who was very prolific, very influential in shaping the early church, which I would love to do, like, an episode on early, like St. Augustine, you know? Yeah, like, that would be fun.
I want to do it on the martyrs.
Girl, a martyr series. We dress up as them and how they died every time.
Yes.
We do one upside down for
one upside down.
Love that idea. Basically what she says is that his writing reveal a panopticon of visible piety in the church, that the rhetoric actually encourages group identification and obedience. So in a lot of the ways that Christianity constructed this panopticon of God, it actually allowed for individuals to feel closer to each other, to feel like an in-group identification of like, we are all prisoners in the same prison being watched by that same guard, and so we feel connected by that. And we are all also like,
I don't like the vibes, first of all.
no, it's dark-sided, girl.
I don't like
it's
the
dark-sided.
vibes.
Like, it's all these prisoners of this oppressive ideology being like, we love it here. And girl, that's what Christianity
What
is.
in the David Dobrik?
Shots fired.
David Dobrik is gone.
Us attacking David Dobrik. Like, you know what? It's really not right of us to stoop down to smaller creators. We really shouldn't do that. You know, we don't want our fans going to attack...
Sorry, I'm sorry, I just saw something about that today, and so my brain thought of it.
David, no, I love that. David Dobrik.
As God.
And he is.
And which he is.
Which he may it be known. David Dobrik is Jesus.
David Dobrik is Cronus, and Mr. Beast is Zeus.
Dark-sided.
Speaking of dark-sided, please continue.
No, oh my god. Ugh. So basically it allowed them to identify with each other, but also in doing so, it had the kind of, we're disregarding threat of violence and oppression and like punishment. It also had the like positive reinforcement, encouragement of like, if you follow these rules, then you get to feel like you belong. It encourages this obedience. Right? Of like, we're all holding each other accountable, and also I want to do this so that you all look up to me and admire me, you know? It's kind of like the other side of the same coin. Is that just me being quiet? I think it's just me being quiet. I think it's recording. Yeah, it's recording. Let's hope so. Okay.
I will say, my voice is in the terms of in the vocal pedagogy sense. My timbre is very here, and yours is very here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's because I'm
I'm
trying to get it anywhere, but right here.
Well, this is different from this.
Okay.
This is your resonator.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
My apologies.
No. Don't apologize. I took one puff of a marijuana cigarette and I done lost my mind.
Meanwhile, I'm like 6 deep.
No, literally, you're like, I'm good. However, she goes on to write that a gendered othering also occurs that instead acts as an isolating and punitive system. So she's basically saying, like, as a whole, the Panopticon of Christianity serves to be this, like, social bonding reinforcement. It allows for, like, in-group identification, and it encourages, like, a rhetoric of obedience. Like,
right.
We are all following an authority. Whereas it also created a gender difference when, like, that's the Panopticon for everybody, but specifically for women, there's this whole other, like, panoptic subset, which is, it's isolating instead of being, like, communalizing, because it's like, women, you need to, like, cover yourself. You need to control yourself.
Yeah.
You need to not participate in prayer and, like, all these
smaller.
things. Make yourself small. So it's like, it's very isolating because you don't get to feel big and part of the community.
Right.
You have to be as small as possible
Yeah.
to follow the community's rules.
Yeah, it's like, the way that I think about that is it's very in the very obvious ways that women can only go so far into, like, temples.
Yes, exactly. And also, like, women, especially in, like, Christian communities, like, back in the day, women weren't supposed to be as social as the men.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like men do all these things together and, like, lead the church, but women, historically, people have hated women talking together, because when they start talking together, girl, they start getting thoughts and things in their head. You know what I mean? They just gotta be home with the kids. That's where they belong. And, you know, that's very isolating. And also, it's punitive. So instead of it being like, oh, we're all following these same rules together, it's like, oh, like, if I do the wrong thing, I'm going to be punished with, like, you know, my husband's going to beat me, or I'm going to be, like, ostracized entirely from this community. So the Panopticon of Christianity is definitely not a, like, evenly distributed force within the congregation. Okay. There's definitely gendered, like, women are encouraged to self-surveil. We can just use the word self-surveil, like, to kind of mean the effects of the Panopticon to make it easier. But, like, women are encouraged to self-surveil, like, 10 times more than men. And this is in society in general, but that power imbalance is reproduced in Christianity with, like, the modesty, cover yourself, like, all those things. So it's bad in a lot of ways for everybody, but it specifically affects women in very specific ways.
Yeah, I can definitely remember growing up, specifically, like, feeling like, Jesus, if you're there, why do I feel alone in this room with you? I interpret that as that, like, Jesus is, like in the room with me, and I am, like, he's the only person that I'm with. Mm-hmm. And just, like, always feeling like every decision I make is, like, he is watching.
Yes.
And he is there.
Yes.
And, like, even if I, like, step out of place, it's, like, that, even that in and of itself is not pleasing, and, like, my job is to be as subservient as I can to him.
Exactly.
Ooh. Self-reflection.
Well, it's also, I like because Christianity creates a God that is always watching you, and it also relies on a very strict moral code. It also just trains you to think of yourself in all of the really demeaning ways that we've talked about before on the pod. It's like every single private thing you do that you should not be thinking about some grand moral code. You should not be thinking about some cosmic force watching you. Like
you're doing nothing mindfully.
You're not being mindful of the eternal being that is currently watching you jerk off in your room. Are you thinking about him? Jerking off while thinking about God?
You're being too mindful.
You're being too mindful. Clear your mind. It's like Ghostbusters, but you're jerking off. Think of nothing.
Think pure thoughts. No, I can't.
God, oh my God. But like, I think, unironically, I think that's actually a good example. Like, sexual shame is a really big one, especially for young people in the church. Like, the idea that God is always watching you.
Yeah.
And that sexuality of, like, really any kind before marriage is a sin. That fucks up your sexuality.
The way when I quote unquote, lost my virginity, like, the almost, like, the way that almost the entire time I was thinking about God.
Girl,
about God.
Girl, you know I was.
Yeah. Oh my God. But like, what the fuck?
No, that's disgusting. That's so shameful that like people who grow up in Christianity are put through that.
I was like he sees that, like
he's watching me.
Yeah, and
he's watching
not
me
happy.
take it up the ass. And he's got his binoculars.
And he is shaking his head.
Mama. But he's also with his other hand. You know? Got Jesus with the jerking off with it.
With the wrists.
With the holes in the hands. Love that. Holes in the wrists.
Holes in the wrists.
Wow.
Yes. Wow.
Wow.
Jesus is an ally.
Like, shame and sexuality should never mix. Those are two things. Whenever you mix shame and sexuality, that's when you get fucking problems.
And it's crazy because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. It's the way that like shame is so already linked to vulnerability.
Exactly, bitch.
Yeah.
Because you can't feel shame unless you like put yourself out there in some way, and we're told that you shouldn't have.
Yeah, you can't.
So you learn to cover it up.
If there is nothing to be shameful of, which are those moments that you are being vulnerable, then there is no reason to have the shame. You know what I mean? Like so, like I don't know, because I don't know. I think that vulnerability would not exist if shame did not exist. Maybe.
I saw this post. I can't remember if it was softcore trauma or gender sauce on Instagram.
Softcore trauma, by
Shout
the
out to
way.
both of them, friend of the pods,
Yeah.
friends of the pod for real. But it was saying something about shame, something to the effect of like shame is really just the learned idea that your needs or your desires specifically can't or won't be met.
And that is like that. Ooh, that resonates so hard,
Right?
Because like. Every time that I know of like feeling embarrassment, it's because I was like I wanted something.
Exactly.
Whether like in social situations, it was like wanting that approval or like needing that acceptance.
I wanted, or like I wanted to do this, or I wanted you to treat me in this way, or like things like that, and then you realize like, no, you're not going to get that. It makes you feel shame because that's kind of the social force that teaches you like, oh, I wasn't supposed to want that. And then you feel bad for wanting it in the first place. Exactly. So it's like, and that makes it so hard to overcome because in order to kind of identify that, you have to be able to tell yourself, no, I do, like, I should be able to desire that or want that or need that and express that. And if my needs or desires go unmet, that's not because they shouldn't be unmet. That's because people, like, are choosing not to. And that requires a lot of understanding of, like, self-worth and self-confidence. And that's very hard to, like, get to that point.
Right, especially if you're, like, still within the system that is continuing to...
shame you.
Yeah,
exactly. Because if a whole system is telling you, like, ew, don't do that. Like, you can't, like, do that. And you just, you have to have the strength to go, like, yes, I can. Yeah. And I do. and I know.
It's so cheesy, but it's so true.
Yes, especially because you know they are going to think less of you for it.
Right.
There is no way to overcome shame in a way that does not leave you in lower social standing.
Yeah.
And that is... ugh.
You see it a lot, like a lot of the content creators that like I like watch are people who used to be in like cults or high surveillance religions.
I don't know why.
Or I don't know
I
why.
don't know why that would interest you.
I don't know why either. But like the thing that the common thread is that feeling of if you do anything that is outside that the approval or the wishes of that group, you lose them.
Exactly.
Like, and if whether or not it comes down to, do you want this more than you need them?
Exactly. Especially like this is queer perspective, bitch. I
Yeah.
think we see shame and sexuality are twin sisters in Christianity, and I think in a lot of religions, but especially Christianity, it's like there is so much shame that centers around sexuality of any kind, and it teaches people to have terrible relationships with their body,
especially for women,
especially
and queer
for women.
people.
Yes. And I was gonna, especially for queer people.
Yeah.
It teaches you to have a terrible relationship with your body. It teaches you to have a terrible relationship with the idea of sex. It teaches you to have terrible expectations for your sexual partners.
Right.
Like it's awful.
Unless you are a straight cis white man, it's like you're what the fuck?
Yeah. I would argue Christianity also like teaches men like
no,
because
absolutely.
Men are taught in society as a whole, like rather oppressively, to like define themselves by their sexuality and to
Right.
objectify women and like all of those things. But then Christianity says, like, especially American Christianity, is like, you do have to be that because you need to be masculine and macho, but also
It's just like the Barbie movie.
if you exactly, but it says you have to do that because you have to be like masculine, this American idea of masculinity, but also if you ever feel or think anything sexual about anyone, then you should feel deeply ashamed
Yeah.
about that, which is like terrible thing to do to young boys, you know, who
Yeah.
are like trying to develop and figure out their own bodies and sexuality.
Yeah.
And then to young girls, it's like, you have got to completely cover yourself up. You cannot, like, there is no discussion of like female sexuality within Christianity.
It is nothing that you want, but something you let happen to you.
It's like the only thing that you should ever think about sex is that you will let your husband do it once you are married.
Whenever he wants.
And whenever he wants. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from that, you are never allowed to have sex before marriage. You cannot instigate sex because you're not supposed to want it or enjoy it. Sex is a way to please your husband and to have babies. Well,
At least like once a week, I think about the implications of the sexual roles that, you know, the Christian religion enforces, and it's just like,
it's disgusting.
it's disgusting.
My mind, I'm not obsessed with sex. It's just that I'm always thinking about it.
You just know a lot about it. And the way that it affects things.
Yeah. No, I was quoting Fleabag, but also
Oh, slay.
I don't like in my mind, like everything just comes back to sex in so many ways, which is like spoiler alert because of a lot of the origins of my trauma,
Yeah.
but also like in my mind, so much of like these structural issues and things that whenever you get into them, it's about sexual domination and
Yeah.
oppression between genders, like always.
Emphasis on the domination.
Exactly. Control. It's all about
Yeah.
control. And the Panopticon, like in this sense, speaking specifically to sexuality, that is a very powerful like example of how it controls behavior, even though God isn't real. There's nothing there. There's nothing in the room with you, and yet you were sitting there afraid to touch and pleasure yourself, or you were sitting there with someone that you're attracted to, afraid to like kiss or enjoy each other's bodies. Like it controls behavior in a way that is so against natural human sexuality. Of course, that's going to cause all sorts of problems and repression. You know?
Yeah, this is so off topic, but it is like not really, but it is so insane how these intangible abstract ideas have a pattern of control over generations and generations and getting worse and worse and worse and layered and layered and layered. And oh my God, it's just like, I don't know. That's all I want to say.
That's all I'll tease for now. Album dropping next week. I
don't know. It's just you like I don't know. I need a second. Sorry.
No, that's valid. I maybe allowing me to speak a little bit maybe to what you're talking about. I think that seeing the way that these same systems of oppression and control affect people throughout time and across cultures allows us to see specifically the nuances and contours of that system of control.
Exactly, yeah.
Because it's like, oh, it affected us in this modern day, in this relationship that we have with sexuality and stuff. It affected us that way. Back in the day when they had that cultural understanding of sexuality and lived their days like this, it affected them that way. You can see, oh, it does the same thing.
Yes, and I think right now, especially with there's being a lot more available queer writings about those things, and so we're like with this generation, we're able to see how it specifically affects the nuances of like the queer experience, especially growing up in the church.
Yes, because I think the self-surveillance that like the Panopticon like of Christianity puts on queer people obviously makes them feel deep shame at even like queer desire and feelings, because remember, God knows your desires.
Right.
God knows your feelings. So when you want to like kiss your friend who's a girl when you're a kid or whatever, then you're like, oh, God heard me think that, and I'm going to hell because I'm feeling gay. You know what I mean?
No, yeah.
Which is a terrifying thing for a child to go through.
Yeah.
Like, terrifying.
And then like for me, like I always, and this is really very young gay genderqueer Kale, it's just like watching like my dad and like my grandfather in these leadership roles and seeing like the way they interacted with people and wanting so deeply to be able to achieve that, and then feeling shameful because that's not what I'm called to do.
Yep,
you know?
Yep. Like this very strict gendered like mold that you're trying to be forced in, and then the like all the shame that you were inundated with when you feel yourself wanting something
and then because like there was nothing more that I wanted than to like lead these camps, because like I love working with kids, I love like events and like seeing the things that my dad did, and then just realizing, oh no, like this is not what God has called me to do, and your job is to like at the very minimum you can like be a music minister or you can be a children's director, but this is like you cannot cross this line, or else God would not, because that would not please God.
You can only go so far in the temple.
Yeah. I can only go so far in the temple. Yeah,
girl. I think that it creates that shame just for experiencing queer desire in your mind, but also it creates like deep repression that then bubbles up in a lot of like dark ways, because whenever you like through shame push sexuality down, just like with any behavior, once you deem a behavior like detestable, then it like can only go to live in detestable circles. You know what I mean? Which like in some circumstances that's just like queerness persevering, but in a lot of circumstances, especially in like small towns and things like that, one thing that is very common amongst especially young trans women who are seeking to affirm their gender, but also amongst young gay men especially, is that like, because the only people who are willing to even seek them out for sex or for any kind of interaction like that they are able to have, or the only people that they are even able to contact with who are queer are like pedophiles.
Yeah, exactly.
Like literally.
And that's what I was like there. That's kind of what I was like going towards when I was talking about like the way that sex is structured. It is so riddled with like pedophilia.
Yes, because specifically because they're constantly thinking about children's sexuality and bodies, and like you need to do this and you need to not do that and you can't let yourself do this. And I know you're constantly thinking about having sex with all of these young little girls and everything, but you got to control yourself, because I know I think about it all the time and I have to control, like, you know. And then when you like young queer people are forced to like, I can't tell anyone about this, I have to hide this, then the only like places that they are able to turn are not their social circles and not like people in any kind of trustworthy position, but like people from the outskirts, rightfully so, of society, who are willing to take advantage of that isolation and vulnerability. Right. And it's like terrible.
Absolutely. Just like the breed, like, and it's just so unfortunate that like it has continued to affect, maybe sometimes unknowingly, but nonetheless damaging generations of people that just have these well intentions, but just because it's become, their worldview has become so corrupted by this idea that everything must be this certain way, or else they're going to be, you know, condemned to eternal damnation. It must be pure to the core. They're just letting all of these other things slip by. It's just like Desperate Housewives.
It's just like Desperate Housewives. I've always said that. The omniscient narrator, that's God.
Exactly. Mary Alice,
girl. So that's kind of, I feel like, touching on a few of the ways that the Panopticon of God within Christianity kind of cultivates this learned self-surveillance and all the behavior that follows it. But I also want to talk about on a more like social level how the Panopticon of the congregation like encourages self-surveillance. Ooh. Right? You know what I mean? So like just kind of for listeners, basically what I'm saying is if you haven't grown up in a church, especially like a Southern Baptist church or things like that, then allow me to enlighten you. Gossip and like surveilling each other members of the congregation and constantly like watching other people and also knowing that you are being watched.
Yes, hypervigilance.
Especially as pastors' kids.
Especially. And
everything we did
I had
reflected
2 ministers in the church.
Exactly.
Grandfather and father.
Constantly being reminded that everything you do reflects back on them. Girl, you have to be constantly aware of that.
I'm the first child of the America's sweetheart of the church.
America's sweet. Speak on it. Talk about, like, did you feel eyes on you at all times?
Absolutely. It was, there was this constant need, because there was me and my brother, and there was this constant need to where we could fight all we wanted at home, but when we got in the car, there was like a switch that had to happen, and not the switch that was in my mom's purse waiting to smack us. Not that switch. There was a switch.
I just imagine your mom with like one of those telescopic like pointers for the whiteboard, like.
And so from a very early age, me and my brother became performers.
Yeah.
And like a lot of it stems back to that because we were aware that like we were being watched and that this image reflected the like my father and my grandfather, and also if my dad's not a good parent, could he possibly be a good pastor?
That
and could
part.
he be right with the
That
Lord?
part, girl.
And so I felt the burden of my father's like appearance and his success upon my shoulders. And as I got older, that's when it started to become, I started to realize my whole life I've been doing this performance, which led to me being like, am I even a Christian?
Yes.
Which led to so much self-doubt, being like, oh my, because you hear all the time being like, your daddy's salvation ain't gonna get you to heaven. And so every time I heard that, be like,
no.
because like I was doing nothing wrong,
Literally.
but just knowing that, not only knowing that people were watching me, but the fact that I knew that people were watching me,
That part.
became, and then, but if you know that, can you ever truly, if you're being too mindful, can you ever be authentic?
But exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you are always acting out like the version of yourself that you know other people want you to be, then you're never going to be able to feel genuine in your interactions with them.
Yeah. And if you're always like, especially if you're someone who, because of the Panopticon like idea of the church, if you're someone who's become so hypercritical of every single thing that you do, you know that no action of yourself will go without analyzing, which means it can never be genuine.
Never, because you have to overthink it.
Yeah, because after so long of that, it becomes that you're analyzing it before you even do it, but you can't stop it.
And that's why, as someone who knew they were queer very young, like, that was horrifying to me. The years that I spent, like, so afraid that people would, like, find out, even though I was like really faggy, no one like talked about it, you know what I mean? I was like afraid that like people, like screenshots of me messaging people that I should not have been messaging would like get exposed or like something like that. Like I was terrified always. And then when I did come out, like it was so hard for me because I knew that it would be like reflecting on my like pastor father and like, you know, my family and things. And then when I did come out, it was like a scandal communally.
Yeah.
People were questioning my father and his ability to like raise a family and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
I
That's a
think
crazy
about
burden to put on young queer people.
I think about that a lot, like right now, because like it's well known now by now at my family's, because I haven't been to church in like a year.
Yeah.
And they know that even when I lived in Petal.
You heathen.
Exactly. And so I know that it's becoming apparent that something happened, and my brother's also not going to church anymore, I don't think. And I think just a parent, and so and even now I feel that guilt of being like, what have I done to my dad and my mom?
Yeah.
You know?
See, I think I feel you, Sister Kale. I think we should both go back to our father's churches to do them proud. I think that
Jesus Christ.
me walking into church like, hey, you guys. A leather dress. Just get on my knees at the.
Yeah, you wait until the end, because I know exactly how long all of my dad's sermons are.
Throw open
I
the
just
doors.
wait until the invitation during the prayer and just walk right up during the hymn.
Forgive me, Father.
Oh my-
Bitch. Oh, okay. Now that's writing fan
Gagging.
fiction. Love
Oh,
that.
Oh, never mind. I have to wait till the Fleabag episode.
No, speak on it now.
No, I'm just thinking about the first time that I watched. Part of me feels like something clicked for both of us whenever I did this. But whenever he says Neil, and I immediately went, oh my God, so annoyed. You were like, the fact that you were annoyed with that, because in the moment it should be like this hot, sexy moment, but the two of us know that is like
exactly,
you
girl,
piece of shit.
exactly, and that is supposed to like, and I think that's intentional.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's supposed to be. I think for general audiences, that's not to get too ahead of ourselves with the Fleabag episode, but just to speak on this real quick, for general audiences, I think that that's supposed to be like it's so hot and sexy and everything,
right.
and then when it all stops and just like Fleabag, you have to go like what just fucking happened? And then especially with what he does later, you're like, oh, you're a piece of shit.
You're a piece of
like,
shit.
Oh, you are, yeah.
But the way
Which,
that
been
like,
there,
but
girl.
we've been known. So as soon as it happened, we're like, oh, it's this
you're
shit.
like, oh, I know who the priest is.
Yeah.
I dated the priest.
Yeah.
I know, like, exactly. It's too much. So the
Fleabag
Panopticon.
But I think Fleabag is a great example of the Panopticon.
No, don't even get me fucking started. You have no idea. You have no idea how hard I was resting writing in my notes. Like, girl, we can't do this. We can't do this. I'm obsessed with Fleabag. Yes.
And I think I really do think that's influence a part of who we are. Just feeling that there's always an audience. There's always something. There's always someone watching.
One of the things that bonded you and I together, especially a listener. I almost said reader, especially listener. If you didn't know, is that like from the beginning we always talked so much about like we're doing a bit, we're doing this for the audience, like turn to applause. You know, like it was always about the camera.
Yeah.
And like who were like we were both performers on the stage, and everyone else we were interacting with didn't know they were in our play.
Right, yeah.
Like it was very much that vibes.
Yes.
And so then whenever anything comes up about like you were being watched, it really like ties that together in my mind of like, of course we developed this like humor and sense of like identity, and also a little bit of alienation around that feeling, because as people who are both performers and also raised in Christianity, we have been since day one taught to think about whose invisible eyes and whose real eyes are on us at all times.
And not to get too gay on the pod, but I think that's like another reason that we saw each other is because, like we said, if you're constantly aware of the fact that you're being watched and everything that you do is being monitored and analyzed, and you start to analyze it yourself, nothing can be genuine.
Nothing.
And so whenever you're someone who has been that is the core foundation of part of your like development as a child, whenever you're interacting with people, it's never going to be genuine.
No.
But whenever we met each other, we were like, oh,
girl,
you're back. You see the set.
oh, yes, mama, it was a wink.
You're behind the camera.
You were the first person I saw wink back. That's what it was.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it.
I've been winking to everybody, but none of them saw
None
it.
of them winked back.
Mama, gay.
Yeah, gay.
Gay.
We got too gay on the pod again.
We got too gay. Can't even blame the alcohol this time. I'm sober.
Blame the one hit of my bong you took.
I literally look, first of all, I look like a hot mom. But second of all, I have become such a mom when it comes to like smoking weed. I'm like, oh, is that the weeds? Can I have a hit of the marijuana cigarette?
Well, that's how I'm with drinking though, because
Really?
like I'll take a shot. I had a shot and a half. It's like, ooh, I'm feeling tipsy.
Ooh, I take like one hit of the bong and I'm like,
But I'm like
flashing
I'm like 6 bowls in.
Exactly, girl.
And I'm doing fine.
Meanwhile, I'm bringing 3 shots of vodka with me to work
Yeah.
just to drink in a water bottle.
But not in the car.
But not in the car.
We don't drink and drive on the pod
Yeah, no.
anymore.
I also think that feeling of like whenever you feel like you're having to perform everything, it's not going to be authentic. That resonates with me a lot as like a trans person. And I think I see a lot of other trans people talk and write about this like feeling of before you can name like that feeling of disillusionment and alienation as gender dysphoria and as the feeling that you need to live as like your authentic self or whatever.
You're type 4.
Oh my god! Like it very much. You are constantly trying to what the author of The Velvet Rage calls like the best little boy in the world syndrome. Like you are constantly trying to be.
I thought of Blur St. Clair.
Oh my god! You are trying to be perfect. You are trying to be what you think every authority figure wants you to be, and oftentimes you're succeeding at that.
Yeah.
And yet every time, like for me, this was very true with my father and with other people in my life. Every time they say like, "I'm so proud of you," every time they say like, "Good job, you accomplished that thing," it feels so hollow because you're like, I wanted your approval, but for some reason getting it doesn't feel good. It's because all that approval is doing to you is proving to you that you were right, that that's what they want you to be, not that they would actually want you to be the thing you are. So you learn to repress and continue being that fake, unauthentic version of yourself.
Well, see, I especially the fact that it's called best little boy in the world syndrome, because especially in my young childhood, I was the perfect son.
Yup.
But I was their daughter.
Be a perfect daughter.
Yeah. Mulan.
Girl.
Oh shit. But anyway, as I got older, I had to learn that if I wanted the approval as a woman and as the way that they saw me, then I had to completely change who I was. You know what I mean? Like so I slowly became like a much quiet, because I'm not the same person. Like it was a very stark. Like when I turned 10 is whenever it all started, and I was like, oh, if I
Girls
want
when they turn 10.
Girls when they turn 10.
Jesus.
I was like, oh, if I can't be who I am because you're being a boy, you're being a man.
Yes,
you can't do that.
You can't rise to the occasion
Yeah.
like masculinity asks you to. You have to shrink yourself until you're nothing.
You like to feel like, and especially as a girl who grew up like plus size, like making the idea of making myself. I remember this. I journaled about this the other day while I was practicing mindfulness.
While you were practicing mindfulness,
I journaled
while you were mindfully journaling
about like my entire life has been about making myself smaller.
Speak on it, bitch. Yeah.
And like when in reality, like there's nothing I want more than to be able to stand up for myself and to like be this person. But because like I know that the best thing for me to do, for the worldview, for me to be safe and for me to secure, is to make myself as small as possible. And also on the same flip side of that, knowing that the only way I'll be deemed worthy and attractive is if I make myself as small as possible.
Exactly.
So I have beef with the word small.
Bitch, you know that fucking gets me too. Like
one of the we had the conversation of the dinosaur in a tutu.
Feeling like a T-Rex in a tutu. Yeah. But that, like, when I transitioned, and this is also partially because of like trans misogyny, but like the bite of trans misogyny echoes its originator. You know what I mean? Like before transitioning, I always felt encouraged and pressured to be like bigger than I ever like felt like I could be, like pressure to grow and rise and succeed, which was also partially just my personality and like my surroundings. But as soon as I transitioned, there was like this stark contrast between like now, whereas before my life was about impressing everyone and being like the best, now I still need to be the best, but I need to do it in a way that makes me completely unnoticeable and as small as possible. I need to take up the least amount of space possible,
as close to the bar as you can get without going above
Exactly. Well, like I need to be perfect at everything I do, but I need to be quiet. I don't need to speak up. I don't need to take credit for anything I've done. And like if I ever try to assert myself or take that credit or like speak up about something I think is wrong, then it's like this, I'm viewed and treated as this belligerent like man in a dress. You know what I mean?
They're just waiting on you. They're just
exactly.
Waiting on it.
It's like there's constantly eyes on you, just like the Christian Panopticon.
Just like reference to the episode.
It's like they're constantly waiting for you to give them evidence for what they've already chosen to believe about you. And that you are an aggressive man pretending to be a woman.
And going back to the Enneagram, we talked about last week, the idea, like especially for 3s and 4s, that that you're a fraud and you're just waiting on everyone else to find out. I think that definitely relates back to like the idea of the Panopticon, because you're aware that like God can see you and that he can see inside your soul as well. You know that your soul's not right because you're constantly like overthinking and be like, oh my God, my soul's not right, because you're so busy thinking about it, and it just goes round and around because you're not being mindful.
You're not being mindful, girl. Not being mindful.
And just like everyone, since you know that you're a fraud and you're waiting on everyone else to know, you live in this constant fear and this constant like idea. You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, as John Mulaney famously said.
Always waiting, because I also think this is the other side of it, that when you are constantly taught to self-surveil and to know that there's this system governing you and your morals, and you're constantly thinking about the fact that everyone else is watching you, it encourages you to watch everyone else. And it teaches you internalize this really harsh self-critiquing eye of like, I need to do this better, I'm doing this wrong, and when I say this, I'm actually meaning this, and I'm trying to cover that up. And then you take that really critical eye and you turn it on everyone else.
Which leads you to like feeling and thinking, like sometimes even now I'll see something and I'll think something and be like, oh my God. What?
Yes.
Who
These
are you?
intrusive thoughts of judgment and like
Yeah.
hatred, especially when it comes to like I don't know, like beauty and things
Yeah.
like that, and
Or
being
like physical appearance and the way you dress. Yeah.
exactly, and being like, Jesus Christ, like this is the exact thing that you suffer because other
Yeah.
people think of you. Like, why are you perpetuating this? But it's because you are like hammered to have those like systems of belief in your head, whether that be
Yeah.
in secular or in this case religious senses.
Yeah. I'm like you have once again put a word to the thing that I like, a pattern that I have noticed, that like just the way that I am, but especially when it's like you said, especially when it comes to like physical appearance and body image, like I have such a critical lens on myself, and I know that I'll never be harder on anyone else than I am myself, but that does not mean that I'm still not being incredibly judgmental and harsh on like other people
Exactly.
that I don't know.
Exactly.
And it's like, where did this come from? And it
Because self-hatred is so insidious in that way, and that's how it shows you really shouldn't be talking to yourself that way, because it's never just I'm just strict for myself. It's that you have been taught this impossible standard, and it happens to be turned on yourself because you're the person you're the closest with, but that standard is also being applied to other people in ways that you don't want it to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like when you can recognize that you shouldn't be thinking of other people in that way, that should teach you that you shouldn't be thinking of yourself in that way.
which also leads to more self-hatred.
Exactly.
By the way.
Because then you feel ashamed for feeling that in the first
Exactly.
place. I wrote about this briefly in my thesis, just in the no, not to cover it up.
Your thesis right here.
Oh, Lord.
On the Mad Woman shelf.
Eden, Virginia Woolf, very nice. That like, especially in earlier days of my transition, I was so like cruelly and like harmfully aware of all of my deficiencies and like every little thing that I felt was like ugly and off about me, like in my appearance, but also my clothes and things like that. And so when I would see other like cis or trans women, like when I would be friends with them or talking to them or like meet them or even have like sexual encounters with them, there would be this constant like narration in the back of my head of like, oh, she's doing this wrong, or like, ooh, like, or if I wore that, I would get laughed out of a room. How do cis
Yeah.
girls get like able to wear this stuff?
Yeah.
You know, things like that. And it's like, I don't want to be thinking any of
Right.
these things about other people, but it keeps on coming up because I've trained myself to think that way about myself.
Yeah, similarly, like even now, like I had such a habit when I was younger, just because I was picked on it so much, is like when I get into a room, I automatically make sure I'm not the biggest person in the room.
Yeah.
Because I knew if I was, and I like if like I was, it was gonna be bad.
Yeah.
Because I would be the first person that like they would turn to make jokes. And so like even now, I'm like I'll go into a room and I'll start like subconsciously like checking out like size wise how I stack up with other people in the room, and I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yep.
This is not the direction you want to go at all.
I still very much find myself comparing myself to like other women, like in conversation, even if there's like I don't give a fuck. I'm not expecting a straight man to like choose me or anything. I'm not trying to impress anyone necessarily, but my brain has just been hardwired to be like, okay, like, is there anyone in this room that like I'm prettier than? Is there anyone in this room that is like considerably less
Yeah.
pretty than me? Like, what does that mean?
At least I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. And usually I'm the one people are thinking that about. So that works out well for me because then I'm the funny girl.
Hell yeah,
Mama.
and you do it well.
And you do it
If
so
no one's
well.
told you, you do your mask fits perfectly.
Keep your chin up, King. Your mask is slipping. That's what the mask is. Because you said that's what the mask is, and I think you're a fucking faggot.
And what?
And what, bitch? Sister Kale, Panopticon aside, and all of the ways it has taught us to self-surveil and surveil others, do you have a verse for us to surveil today?
I do, but first we're gonna have to put this little ladybug outside.
Let's do it. So, Sister Kale, what verse do you have for us today?
Okay, today's verse is going to be Psalms 139, verse 23 and 24. And I
Okay.
think you'll find that it is very on theme for today.
Okay.
And it says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my concerns. See if there is any offensive way in me. Lead me in the everlasting way." And I have this underlined, by the way.
Girl, mama, that is the boom boom
Yeah.
Panopticon, as Gia Gunn would say.
Yeah. Knowing that, like, you're... And you're supposed to want him.
You're supposed to... Mama, also, that's so, like, sensual.
Yeah.
Search me. Be
Know
inside me.
everything about
Like,
me.
girl, jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want celebrating the fact that Jesus, like that God is in every single little crevice of you.
Not the crevices.
Mama, he's like that. You know when people take like that sticky gel and like put it in like car cup holders and stuff to stick out all the grit that gets in there, and yeah, that's God getting in your soul.
One that
that was such a what's the drag race judge who Ross Matthews.
Ross
Where he's like,
Matthews.
you know, like the car cleaning gel. When you like put it in all the little things, you get it, and you go, this just got everywhere that I thought it was. That was you.
He does this all the time. Anyway,
What?
he does this all the time.
Oh
He just
yeah.
hands on his-
Yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
okay.
My dad loved to say pruning.
Pruning.
Like he was pruning.
Yep.
Like
That verse. What's that verse? What's that verse about that?
I don't remember, but I know that's the one that he was quoting.
Yeah. Girl. Ugh. Cut off the parts of yourself that God doesn't like. Cut off the parts of the congregation that. I'm about to get part 2 pretty soon. The ultimate circumcision. Vaginoplasty.
I'm more circumcised than you.
Yeah, like, sorry.
Don't tell you.
Sorry, but.
I guess I'm holier.
Literally. Okay, too much.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps it up. I think we've been gay enough for today.
But you know what else is gay?
Who's gay?
God is gay all the time.
And all the time, God is gay.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for listening to today's service. And as always, thank you to our music minister, Brother Sam, for creating that beautiful piece of music that is our intro and outro.
And if you are a visitor with us today, if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button and rating us 5 stars wherever you're listening, and if you love the show next week when you come back, why don't you bring a friend?
And remember, God is gay all the time.
And all the time, God is gay.